So we're finally here at the end of the year that is 2023. And man, what a year it has been. We've seen so many games come out and come into their own, flourishing, and we've seen so many different genres thrive. We've seen so many different success stories from niche games that have made it all the way to the Game Awards. I think of games like Armored Core that had like its dedicated fan base, but have seen a lot more success over this year with the release of their 6th entry. Whether you're a lover of survival horror, fighting, or RPGs, there has been so many different games to really get into this year, and it's crazy to me. Like, there is so many games that I still haven't got around to crossing off the list that feel like essentials. But today is a day of reflection to celebrate the year that was 2023, and for me to share many of the standouts that really meant something to me this year. This video will primarily be my opinion and opinion based, but if there's a game that you really enjoyed that didn't make this list or get a mention, it's more than likely because I didn't end up finishing it or playing it this year. But I'm currently still working through a few games from this year, and there's a bunch that I already want to talk about in the new year, and there's a bunch of others that I just want to get around to. So if there's a game that's absent from this list, let me know, because I would love to cover it off and I'd love to hear what your games of this year are. So yeah, I'd love to hear that down below, but without further ado, let's get into my games for 2023 that were standouts. So to kick this list off, we'll be talking about the first game, which is Sea of Stars. Man, I love this game's visuals and soundtrack straight out the gate. I was really invested simply by presentation alone. I was excited for this back when I saw it earlier in the year at the Nintendo Direct. I was like, holy shit, I need to play this. We've seen so many games recently, from Octopath Traveler, Live Alive, and also the new Star Ocean remake that more recently came out. These HD 2D adventures that have taken the old school JRPG formula and added some modern design elements to it to spice it up and make it more palatable in this day and age. And I think it's worked exceptionally well for those games, Octopath Traveler being one that I need to get around to still and I'm lacking on. But the thing with Sea of Stars here is it feels like it's a reinvigorated homage to those JRPGs of old, whilst instead of taking these modern principles that define modern RPGs and packaging them into a retro experience, Sea of Stars feels like a retro-inspired experience, packing its own original ideas into this experience and making it something more distinct and unique. And I love this game for that. One example of Sea of Stars flexing this originality is in its approaches to turn-based combat, which is something that is truly exceptional here. I loved the interactive elements of the turn-based combat found in Sea of Stars. So it does have all the elements of what you would find in a traditional game, where there's different types of abilities that'll hone in on an enemy's weakness, but there's an additional flair of interactivity where you can have different abilities that will have a time to charge, or something like a boomerang that'll shoot back and forth, and then you can time it and keep it going and chaining the boomerang for longer and longer. And these type of things add an additional level of engagement that will reward you for staying engaged with the combat, which is something that can feel rather manual at times, feel a bit more engaging and keep you switched on during each encounter. And it's something that I really do like about Sea of Stars combat. It's very different, and this is what I mean when I say they're bringing a lot of new ideas to the table, and while still providing what feels like an homage to a retro experience. The locations alone in this game are just so diverse and awe-inspiring, and the same can be said for the boss encounters too, and they feel clever and well thought out and very distinct in their presentation and mechanics. The characters as well in this game are endearing, and although the story may take a few hours to pick up steam, with some people feeling like the start of the game might be a bit slow, the journey itself is incredible, and the more time you spend with these characters and the world, you will just easily get invested. Sea of Stars, if you are someone who likes these old school types of adventures like Chrono Trigger, the old Final Fantasies, Dragon Quests, it's a no-brainer to play and pick up and at least give a try, and one that I recommend and I enjoyed in 2023. Okay, so number 9. I know I'm going to anger some people with this, but it's my list, my choice. And you know what? Cyberpunk 2077 was one of the best experiences that I've had in 2023. And with the new Phantom Liberty expansion and the big update 2.0, the game itself feels like it's been improved to a state where the game that I enjoyed in 2020, despite its myriad of issues and that dumpster fire of a launch that it was, is now a game that I truly believe is insanely good. The story is as good as it ever was, but now from a new retrospective lens, I've been able to appreciate it a lot more and really get invested in its characters and find them a lot more charming the second time around. I think what Update 2.0 has really done for me is provided me a new outlook on this story that always existed, this game that always was there, but it's become a lot more meaningful, more impactful from wanting to play it a lot more attentively and seeing a lot more of these endings and looking at it a lot more retrospectively and getting this holistic experience on what Cyberpunk 2077 was. Because I did enjoy it in 2020. I felt the story was just something average, but now I feel like I really enjoyed it. I thought it was something incredible this time around. The Update 2.0 provides a plethora of reworks and changes to gameplay, from overworking the underwhelming skill trees and crafting system to more impactful changes as well, like adding vehicle combat and a lot of other changes into the game as well that just make the game feel more balanced and fun to engage with. There are so many different builds and things that you can make now with the game, where I think one of the original complaints was how redundant much of the skill trees in particular felt, where now there's a lot more new abilities like finishes and new different builds that can make being a net runner or being stealthy feel a lot more like meaningful choices and that have an impact on the environment and the way you play the game. I think overall Cyberpunk to me is a game that I look at and it's like buried underneath a lot of problems was always a good game, but now it is a game that I feel can truly be appreciated for all of its merits. A lot of the bullshit has been wiped away and a lot of the things that were always good buried underneath can now just truly shine. The gem that it was always meant to be and always in a lot of ways was, now can truly flourish. The Phantom Liberty expansion as well, man. Oh man, that was something. It was such a compelling spy espionage story and one of the best stories I've seen them touch on within this Cyberpunk universe. And one thing that I really do love about Phantom Liberty is that they did start to take steps to one of my biggest criticisms with the Cyberpunk base game, and that is the aspect of choice. I felt like Cyberpunk 2077 had this real illusion of choice where they give you choices, but there's only really one or two ways things can play out, and it never really did feel like there was a say in the matter. I feel like Phantom Liberty does address this. There are many meaningful choices that lead to different outcomes, endings, and situations that occur throughout the expansion, and I think that that is a step in the right direction, and I really do hope it's something that they double down on with Cyberpunk Orion. Overall, Night City is as excellent of a universe as it always has been, and it feels so immersive to get lost in and so incredible. And now with the new DLSS 3 and the new ray tracing technology, it just looks phenomenal and better than ever. It is just insane. If there has ever been a better time to jump into the universe of Cyberpunk, now is your chance to go in, and now is the perfect opportunity to jump in, because Night City has never shined as bright as it does now. And for that reason alone, Cyberpunk is just one of my games that I thoroughly enjoyed this year. Next up, we have Spider-Man 2, which was the follow-up to the critically acclaimed Marvel's Spider-Man from 2018. Spider-Man 2 to me was an interesting entry, as I loved everything that this story had to show, and it was fun with the combat, but it felt like the choice to limit the amount of gadgets available between Peter and Miles, it felt like a bit of a step backwards. But man, the abilities and the ability to seamlessly hop between Peter and Miles was something that was awesome, and the set-piece moments were absolutely incredible, and Insomniac's second outing with Spider-Man doubles down on all the core things and the foundations established in previous games. What I found so fascinating with this sequel was how it was able to tell two different Spider-Man stories in parallel and make it work so well. Miles Morales kind of inhabits the story of the origin Spider-Man story, that coming of age, coming to being Spider-Man story, and Peter Parker on the other hand is like, he's been through it. He's been Spider-Man for so long, and now it's like this balance between life and trying to understand the juggling of responsibility between Peter and Spider-Man. Whilst Miles still has that struggle too, it is from these two different opposite ends of the spectrum, where one is starting their Spider-Man journey and one is kind of a veteran looking for a way to kind of transition and find balance between their regular everyday life. And I found that story just so fascinating and so well written, and and then suddenly I could really just understand how to write a compelling Spider-Man story. There are so many interesting things here, from the different plethora of villains that are the Spider-Man pantheon, and there is so much other stuff there that I don't really want to spoil in this video, and I am working on a video for Spider-Man and the Spider-Man trilogy to just tackle on this channel because I love these games. They were awesome, and I'd love to talk more about them. But yeah, like the cliff notes of how I felt about these games was, man, the web swinging was as tight as ever, with more freedom, flow, and style than any of the previous games, and the inclusion of the web suit, which felt like it absolutely rocks, man. I love just like gliding around and just, you know, breaking up the flow between that and web swinging. I tried not to abuse it too much, just using it whenever I saw the wind tunnels and just trying to, you know, get some cool air and then just transition back to web swinging and then like running along the buildings, jumping. It was like a cool combination that really just made the traversal of Spider-Man just feel that much more fluid and fun, because that's one thing I really realized with Spider-Man and open world games was the traversal in these games is what makes that open world feel so dense in a sense, even though there is a wealth of activities, but even when there isn't, just it's so satisfying to get around. And man, the combat too just feels as good as it ever did, and there is just so much here with Spider-Man. And as someone who really like grew up loving Spider-Man as a kid and then kind of just, you know, like the movies, watch the movies, whenever they come out, you know, you watch them and you're like, oh yeah, Spider-Man's cool. This game got me back into Spider-Man. I was looking up comics, I was looking into things and going, oh, that's that character, that's what's going on. And it really got me back into just the character, the lore, and the universe. And I was like, it reawakened that inner Spider-Man fan inside of me. And I think that game heats for that. And that's one reason, on top of this game just being incredible, as to why it makes my list this year. Yeah, Spider-Man 2, it rocks, it's awesome, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, so for this next entry, I'll be cheating a little bit and adding two games that I both believe, from the same series, earn a slot here at number 7, which are both impactful games that just deserve a nod in general. And those are the two Like a Dragon games that released this year, with the first being Like a Dragon Ishin and its smaller but sizable epilogue to the main series, Like a Dragon Gaiden. It's been a crazy year for RGG. They've put out two exceptional games here, one being a fully fledged remake of a PS3 game that we never saw leave Japan when it originally released, and another game which was a smaller game but a perfect send-off for the Like a Dragon series main protagonist, Kiryu Kazuma. But it's crazy to think that they'll be having 3 games come out within the span of a year, with Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth hitting shelves within the next couple of weeks. It really does bode well for Infinite Wealth, given how fantastic both Ishin and Gaiden are. And that's what we're here to talk about today. It's just how simply fantastic both Ishin and Gaiden are as games, and how much of an impact they had on my 2023. So first off, let's kick it off with Ishin. This cleverly crafted retelling of Japanese history through the avatars of many iconic characters established throughout the Yakuza franchise was enthralling and engaging throughout the 40+ hours I have had with playing this game. The changes to combat felt fitting whilst not compromising the core brawler elements that define the series throughout the first 6 entries of the Kiryu games. There is an abundance of different sub-stories, game systems, side activities, and a ton of other little mini games to just get lost in this world, including this thing that elevates the combat, which is like a card-based system where you can also use that to recruit and level up soldiers, like a mini gacha game of sorts, but also have it have impacts in combat. There is a lot here in this game that is just oozing with that substance and style that you will see in any RGG game. The DNA is here and coming at full force. And the more I played it, the more I thought, wow, this is a great entry point for anyone wanting to get into these games. Because I've played all the main games, I've played the new turn-based Like a Dragon games, and I think Yakuza 0 was my entry point and I absolutely love that game, but I can see Ishin being another great starting point for someone looking to get into these games. It is an isolated story that doesn't have any baggage of the previous games connecting to it. It's a game that encapsulates all the charm and all the details and mini games and substance that you've come to know with all of the other games And it's just a great, clever game to just get into and just have a lot of fun, and there's tons of different stories here, and you will love it. If you have found this series daunting to get into up until this point, I highly recommend checking out Ishin as a starting point. It's now on Game Pass as well, so it has never been a better time to check this game out. There is so much here to love, and I absolutely adored the environmental work and the bonds that you could form with many of the different people that you encounter in this world too. It is such a fantastic game, and with over 8 mainline entries, it may seem daunting to dive in, but Ishin is a great independent experience that encapsulates all the best aspects of the RGG games and DNA that is in the Like a Dragon franchise, and is a great starting point. I can't emphasize that enough. On the flip side though, this is a game that is a lot less accessible as a starting point. Like a Dragon Gaiden is in fact the opposite. It is a send-off, an epilogue. This is the game that closes out the chapters for Kiryu Kazuma and his spotlight as the main protagonist. Like a Dragon Gaiden comes as being one of the shortest games in the series, being around 17 hours long to complete its main story, but it is definitely packed with sub-stories which are told through this new subsystem called the Akame Network, which is a different approach to that whole sub-story formula which defined the series for so long. It's important when going into Gaiden to know just how much content here has been tweaked and changed to meet that more smaller, compact experience, but it doesn't compromise a lot of what makes this game so great. And I think if you are someone who's been following this series for a long time and is up to date with everything, this can feel like a very heartfelt game and a great closing chapter here. Not to mention that there is some really interesting changes to combat here that may look silly in this grounded, realistic world about the underbelly of Japan's Yakuza and everything like that. There is so many different abilities here, like the ability to shoot a string that can tie up enemies or pull them towards you like a grapple, and don't ask me how it works, but it just works within this universe because RGG said it's going to work, and the Yakuza games just make it work. And there is another ability here that I absolutely love to abuse called the Jet Boots, which had me going from Like a Dragon Gaiden to Like a Dragon Gliden, and that was just a fantastic experience all in all. The overall game was just a wonderful experience and a great send-off for Kiryu. The gameplay felt as tight as it does in any other game, and the quests and side stories, like the sub-stories themselves, were really cool. There was like a guy trying to pick up a girl through using ChatGPT to help him, and I thought that was really funny, and there's a bunch of other just charming stories that you'd come to expect in this franchise. There is a lot here to love, and if you are a fan of this series and you love this character, this is the perfect tactful send-off before you move into Infinite Wealth. So overall, Like a Dragon this year has been flourishing as a franchise. We have seen 2 games, and its long-awaited sequel is on the way this month in a couple of weeks. And I am more than excited to just dive into this game and just see more of what RGG is cooking up. And seriously, Like a Dragon has been a phenomenal game for my 2023, and I suspect it's going to be one of the highlights of 2024. Okay, so now we're on to number 6, and this game is an interesting one. I was tossing up between 2 different survival horror games here that I really enjoyed this year, that being the Dead Space remake and Resident Evil 4 remake. And ultimately, I decided to go with Resident Evil 4 remake here because I played the original for the first time this year in the lead up to Resident Evil 4, and it served as a really interesting contrast as to just how much they've reshaped, recontextualized the remake. There is so much here in RE4 remake that just makes it such a phenomenal experience. And it's crazy to say that because when I played the original Resident Evil 4, I was thinking to myself, man, this game is incredible. Even in 2023, this game holds up so well. Does this really need a remake? And Capcom answered me with a, yeah, in some ways I guess. It's a reinterpretation that doesn't make the original feel redundant, but serves as an alternative, and a really good alternative, and a modern masterpiece that fits really well within the context and the story of what the remakes are trying to tell, and the themes and tone that the more modern games are going for in this series. Ultimately, a lot of things still do remain intact. Ultimately, Leon is still a badass, and he uses those cheesy one-liners, although a bit more sparingly, and has a roundhouse kick to make sure you know he's the one in charge. So the Resident Evil 4 remake, whilst preserving the roundhouse kicks and the iconic bingo line, does modernize this game, and it does make it neatly fit more into this feeling and broader scope of what the series is going for. And it's going to be interesting to see where the games go from here, given that the original Resident Evil 4 was the turning point that took the series in a more action-oriented direction. So Resident Evil 4, man, like, just to get into the game itself, it adopts the control schemes found in the previous remakes. It also does cut out some moments of the original RE4 campaign that do feel like they draw out the story and make the game feel a bit more bloated, and those segments were a little unnecessary. And here in the remake, it feels a lot more like a compact, action-packed experience, hitting all the high notes and key points that are necessary for the RE4 story. Seriously, the uplifts to combat, weapon upgrades, the melee mechanics, and more importantly, the relationship between Leon and Ashley are all something that I feel like were really well executed, from the mechanics and a design perspective to the story that they're trying to tell too. It's all been uplifted in a way that works for what they're trying to tell. Many of the boss encounters too do fit this mold as well, having a facelift where a lot of these encounters and boss encounters do feel a lot more impactful, and some of them have been fleshed out narratively, providing a bit more depth and substance to their encounters. And I think that overall it does make RE4 feel like a lot more of a cohesive and fleshed out experience if you're wanting a little more narrative heavy game with the touch-ups and brush-ups mechanically and gameplay design wise of the previous remakes. And I think that RE4 finds this perfect balance here. It's a game that would have been fine without a remake, but I'm glad got one. It really is a fantastic game, and if you're looking for a good game in this series to jump into, I highly do recommend the remake. Whilst it does have its place alongside the original and both are still worth playing, the remake is an outstanding game, and RE4 Remake just tells that Capcom is on a winning streak here with this franchise and has found their roots again and know where they're going. And it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. So this next one is a bit of an odd pick, but one that really scratched an itch for me. This game is, despite its weird, awkward name, Master Detective Archives Raincode, and it is one that really flew under the radar this year for reasons that are understandable, being its niche story and mechanics that were offered in a year packed full of banger titles. To me, Raincode really did scratch a particular itch. It being a spiritual successor to Spike Chunsoft's Danganronpa series, Raincode's gameplay placed a heavy focus on gathering information and its zany portrayals of deduction and debate. The story is wacky, and what you'd expect from the studio behind Zero Escape and Danganronpa. Tokyo Games really did nail this game here, and I seriously love how this game came to be. The story follows an amnesiac junior detective, Yuma Kokohead, who is boarding a train heading to the Kanai ward as a part of a detective agency. Yuma, with no recollections of his memories, is greeted by a group of other elite detectives known as Master Detectives, who are these special force of detectives who have an innate detective skills and supernatural abilities referred to as a forte. After a whirlwind of oddities unfold, Yuma is placed in a situation where the demon that is the cause of his amnesia and his sidekick in crime, Shinigami, have formed a pact, and she needs to show him his abilities to help him solve the case of a mystery that has unfolded before him. Shinigami's powers teleport Yuma and the player into this metaphysical version of the case and that is unfolded, known as a labyrinth, where Yuma must fight back and uncover the truth of the case. It takes a very sort of like Persona-esque type of vibe here, where it goes into this alternative world that represents the case, and the world itself is trying to fight back with lies and fiction to distort the truth of the case, and you, Yuma, must go through these different dramatic, over-exaggerated different types of mini-games to find and deduct the truth. It plays this good rhythm between unfolding and showing a lot of exposition with the story and setting up investigation segments, and then going into these fantasy labyrinths to deduce the truth. And man, the mini games in this game are so fun to just get involved with. Like, there is one where people will throw different arguments at you going, it can't be me, I didn't do it because this reason. And then you gotta like slice through the arguments with a sword and then cut away like white noise arguments, and it's like really cool. It's like Debate Bro, the video game, but there's a bunch of other cool little games here to unpack and get involved, and it is this nice little rhythm that gets into this game, and it has about a 30-hour runtime, and it doesn't feel like it overstays its welcome. I do feel the introduction to this game was insanely good, and then there are a few chapters here and there, some more of a highlight than others, but overall I found this game really enjoyable and really quirky and different, and I do reckon that this is one worth checking out. It's exclusive on the Switch, and I do think that it being on the Switch does show a few issues here and there with its frame rate, a little bit of like muddy textures here and there and things like this, but nothing to really ruin the experience, and overall I had a blast playing this game. Next up is one of the most mind-bending and absolutely outstanding narratives that I've experienced in 2023, and that is Remedy's long-awaited sequel, Alan Wake 2. Man, it is hard to put into words all the moving parts that make this game truly incredible, but I'll try my best here. Alan Wake 2 tells two stories between its two main characters, Alan and Saga, their stories running in parallel with one another. But the contrast between the mechanics and tone here are also quite a sight to behold, where Saga's segments feel like a modern survival horror where it's like Resident Evil meets Twin Peaks. The Alan Wake segments feel like they're more sinister, noir New York, where you're able to use light to manipulate and write different scenes into existence. What is beautiful about Alan Wake 2 is how it cleverly uses these two stories of the game and two different sides of the same coin as a yin and yang to one another to play off different elements of the story and different gameplay elements to better serve and convey the concepts and laws of this established universe. Alan, for example, being able to find echoes of influence which help him create new scenes which will then transform and influence and impact the world is such a brilliant idea that marries this idea and narrative theming into practical gameplay and real mechanics. This idea of a writer being able to write a different scene that can transform a location it's such a Remedy idea, and it is truly just one of the highlights of this game. But it's not just on the Alan side where Remedy have gotten creative. The Saga segments too are full of open areas to explore, neat collectibles to check out, and some truly tense sequences here with the cult. The concept and idea of the Mind Place is an area where I think they've really got some cool ideas here going to visualize the concept of a detective piecing all these different things together. And again, there's just these ideas and visualizations of these different concepts and ideas that Remedy plays with that I think make Alan Wake such a fascinating game to play through. It is very different. It is very much a game that feels like an indie art house game, but at the same time a AAA video game simultaneously. I think what I like a lot about Alan Wake 2 is that it isn't very compromising in what it is trying to do and tell, and for some that might be a polarizing experience that might turn you away from the game, but for others I think there is something really charming here. This game is truly something special and a really great game to just experience, and man, it looks so incredible visually, from the noir neon lit New York to the different settings of Bright Falls that you experience at different parts of the day as Saga. It is absolutely incredible. Honestly, it feels like Remedy have not held back here, and they are just going all in from all these different things, from the action moments to the different gameplay mechanics and the meta references that Remedy uses as callbacks to all their prior works, and this lightly connected universe to the Control series. Everything here just feels like it is so well executed, and I feel like there is a certain charm to this. Like we talk about many prominent figures in this game industry. The one that I think of when I think about this that everyone likes to talk about, and one who is one of the greats, is Hideo Kojima for his ideas and how he can meld cinema with video games. And I truly do believe that Remedy and Sam Lake are in this same creative domain here with Alan Wake, marrying many different techniques and learnings from their previous games, but also from the world of cinema and other different mediums too, and seeing what they can do to make and push the creative storytelling and story direction of Alan Wake, and they truly have made something quite captivating here. Alan Wake 2 was a big surprise and a big highlight for me this year, and one that I'm going to be eager to see return in the years to come. And I've always enjoyed Remedy games, but after Alan Wake 2, I'm really invested and really keen to see what they put out next from here. This game was truly a surprise to me, as I went into this year, I didn't even know it existed. This game, as soon as I saw it shadow dropped out of nowhere, I knew it would be something special. And that, my friends, is Hi-Fi Rush. This game, man, this is one that really, in so many ways, throws me back into a time capsule of those Saturday morning cartoons and the PS2 era of games that were quirky, charming, and ultimately different. Seriously, for a game that released all the way back in January, I was worried I'd forget about it come this time of year when making this video, but the opposite has happened in fact. As the year progressed, I only grew to love and remember Hi-Fi Rush more. Whether it is the game's soundtrack that has made it into my regular rotation, or the insanely addictive combat that is easy to pick up and difficult to master. Hi-Fi Rush is a game that oozes with charm in every department, whether it's its hybrid concept of marrying two genres of games such as rhythm and hack and slash, or making a BPM horde rush mode, or a tower mode to finesse and perfect your skills and give DMC a run for its money. Hi-Fi Rush's gameplay and variant side modes are all a treat to play through, and one that I would say I'd highly recommend if you haven't already. Its story is one that is quirky and quite charming in many ways, and all the characters are just so lovable. As I mentioned before, it is a game that feels like a throwback, and it's just such an incredible game. Like, it feels like such an experience that I haven't seen since the days of the Dreamcast or the PS2, and it really just hits this a certain type of distinguished feeling that I just can't explain. The adventures of Chai and friends are so fun, the bombastic experience that will keep you smiling, and is a game that even after finishing it, I found myself just randomly returning to throughout the year to try and see how my skills were. Hi-Fi Rush is the latest from Tango Gameworks, a studio primarily known for making horror games. It feels like a completely different direction for them, but one that has paid off extremely well and is arguably one of the biggest home runs for Xbox this year. I absolutely adore this game, and it is one that if you have Game Pass, you should be downloading right now, and you should just give this game a try in general. Hi-Fi Rush is a game that was an overnight success, and once you boot this game up, play at least one level, you'll easily see why. This game is so fantastic and was a joy for me in 2023. But it's more than that. Hi-Fi Rush was just an extremely incredible game. From its concept alone and how it marries the concepts of music into everything, the syncopating environments with the music that's playing and how that works so well with combat. This sense of nostalgia that I get from this game, even though it's a completely new concept, makes me feel like it's something that I've seen and experienced before, something that I just feel nostalgic for in a way that just not many games make me feel, whilst simultaneously being a completely wholly new experience, doing and experimenting with new things. I love this game so much, and it would be a damn shame if we never saw a sequel to this game, which I'm suspecting we will, because this game it hit every metric and it was a real sleeper hit of this year. Man, I can't express it enough, but seriously, check this game out if you haven't. Hi-Fi Rush has been a real highlight for me in 2023, and one that'll be yours too. So, we're now getting to the big leagues, the top two, and the second one should come as no surprise to any of you. The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Man, what an experience that game was. And that was the second game on this list to really just take up over 100 hours of my time. And honestly, I've loved every second of this experience. Tears of the Kingdom iterated on the blueprint established by Breath of the Wild, but it doubled down on it in ways that we could not even imagine back when Breath of the Wild came out. This is insane, not only through its gameplay elements, but also through its underlining design philosophy. What sold Tears of the Kingdom for me was how Nintendo was able to take this level of curiosity that makes the open sandbox of Hyrule such a wonder to explore, but cleverly marries those concepts of curiosity with this philosophy of creativity. For me, where the mantra of Breath of the Wild felt like it was fueled on visual cues of curiosity to tap into that instinct of what's over there in the distance, that shining beacon, let's go investigate. Tears of the Kingdom felt more like it took this notion of epistemic curiosity and it fueled it with endless levels of creativity, seeing so many different things littered around this world and saying, I wonder what happens if I put that together. I wonder what contraption I can make. And it's this mode of creativity and this perfect blend with curiosity that makes exploring, traversing, and fighting within Hyrule such an exceptional part of this game and makes it feel way more boundless in ways that Breath of the Wild never did. To me, I feel like Tears of the Kingdom isn't just a Breath of the Wild 1.5, it is an exceptional expansion and a full-on, fledged evolution of that formula that was established 6 years ago. Tears of the Kingdom is such a boundless game with the level of creativity and the way that the player is able to interact with this world. Everything is so systemic, everything feels like it has a cause and effect, and the player can freely solve so many of its mysteries and puzzles in a plethora of ways. And this is another area where I feel like Tears of the Kingdom really does evolve on much of the charm found in Breath of the Wild, where I feel like Breath of the Wild had a limitation of tools, and so does Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild only really did have one way to solve many of its different shrines and puzzles out there in the world. But I feel like Tears of the Kingdom had many different modes and mechanisms to solve many of the different puzzles, given the way that the tools were able to interact with many of the world and the environment. There is the inclusion of the sky isles above and the depths down below that just make this game feel like an entirely different experience depending on what plane you are traversing through. The narrative for Tears of the Kingdom as well is another aspect that I feel hits more of a higher note than its predecessor did back in 2017. Overall, if you are a Switch owner and you don't have Tears of the Kingdom, man, you are missing out. This is undoubtedly a high point for you, the console, and this is just one game you should be picking up and playing because there is so much here to love about this game, and I have no idea how Nintendo are continuously able to top each game they make and just do this, but they have done it. I don't get how they top Breath of the Wild, but they managed to do it, and they managed to make Breath of the Wild look like a blueprint and a much simpler game than it actually is, with how incredible Tears of the Kingdom turned out to be. And if it wasn't for this next game, Tears of the Kingdom would undoubtedly be the game of the year, and it definitely is a worthy contender. But honestly, there is so much to talk about with this game. I'll leave a link to my video for it down below because I love Tears of the Kingdom so much and it deserves all the love. But now it's time to discuss my game of the year. Okay, so here we are, my game of the year for 2023. I wish I could be a bit more interesting here, but it is undeniably and undoubtedly Baldur's Gate 3. Larian Studios has created a video game that continues to remain fresh and exciting throughout its long 80-hour plus runtime. Baldur's Gate is an RPG that doubles down on all the components that make the genre so phenomenal. A plethora of excellent and well-executed choices that make the weight of your decisions feel felt throughout the world and the legend that you leave behind. Characters that are well written and multifaceted with an ever-evolving storyline that unfolds in a multitude of ways depending on the relationships formed with the player. How these characters flesh out into a subsect of different storylines makes the story for Baldur's Gate that much more rich, and the universe feels so finely crafted and it's so effortless in the way that they do this. It makes this game feel so special to me. Another aspect of Baldur's Gate 3's brilliance stems from how densely packed and interactable the world feels. Some examples here are the ability to freely move items around and the hidden levers or switches that may reveal a hidden passageway that were hiding behind a portrait or a box. The different spells that can enable the player to interact with different NPCs, such as spells that let you talk to the animals or even the dead. Like, man, it is insane. It really does bring this fantasy to life where you are constantly wondering, but what if I did this? And then, what's the crazy part is that 9 times out of 10, Larian have an answer. Baldur's Gate holds so much more significance to me personally, on top of being an excellent game, as this year was the year that I took the leap into the world of D&D and understanding the early learning curves of creating a character, understanding the game terms, lore, and the vast overload of information that one acquires when diving into the world of D&D. So the release of Baldur's Gate served in many ways as a mechanism to better understand many of the foundations that make up the D&D experience. The character creation, the skill checks, and understanding advantage/disadvantage, along with its wealth of appropriate starting traits, proficiencies, and different classes, armor classes, all these different terminologies, the different races that you can pick, and just everything that exists within D&D, and in large part in Baldur's Gate. It really did make settling into this experience and understanding this so synonymous and like a harmonious experience in many ways. And I think that's just a testament to how well crafted Baldur's Gate is and how faithful it is to the D&D experience. So that's a bit of a side point, but back to video games, Baldur's Gate 3 really does encapsulate this feeling of playing a D&D campaign through a video game format so effortlessly. As I've started many different playthroughs, both solo and with friends, it is so comprehensive in its approach and design that players with no experience can understand the mechanics of the game, whilst Baldur's Gate simultaneously stays faithful to the tabletop that it's built upon. If you have been keeping up with the latest with video games, you'd know that Larian won the Game of the Year award, which should come as a surprise to no one. But it also won another award which I think speaks true to how well put together Baldur's Gate 3 is, and that is the best multiplayer game, because seriously, playing this game either solo or with friends, it feels like two separate experiences, but in of itself, it is just so well put together. And you look at, if you just play this game by yourself, you're like, man, how is this game functioning? How does it work? Let alone with up to 4 friends, I am just like, my jaw drops every time I think about it. It's like the idea that this game is functional and runs extremely well, pretty seamless, and is such an easy experience, that is a rare feat to come by, and it is hard to do with a game of this magnitude. And it's not only that, I think like the capacity to experience this D&D like experience with friends, by yourself, or even via couch co-op is just a testament to how Larian have wanted to keep the roots of what makes a D&D experience come to life within a RPG here with Baldur's Gate. But it's not just how different the multiplayer experience is, there is so many different experiences here that can keep this game fresh and replayable. For me right now, I'm thinking of the Dark Urge playthrough, the Origin character playthroughs after playing through my main character, and there's so much here to just keep this game fresh. There's so many different choices that I made originally that I'm like, I wonder if I went this route and did this thing. It makes you just want to come back to this game. There is an endless amount of possibilities, choices, and consequences that all have meaning that make Baldur's Gate 3 feel like a game that you could play for years and still uncover many of its mysteries. A game of this level of depth and substance really does push this genre forward in a way that is a rarity, and is one that should be admired and appreciated for all that Larian have managed to accomplish. In every respect, this game is outstanding, from its banger soundtrack, its exceptional acting and performances, its brilliant reimagining of what an RPG can be overall, and its adoptions of the D&D foundations. This experience will stick with you. Even after you've played hundreds of hours of completing this game and gone through multiple playthroughs, you will be eager to jump in for one more. Like with every video on this list, especially Baldur's Gate 3 in particular, there is many things that I would love to go through and more thoroughly discuss, but I have a video particularly for Baldur's Gate, so if you want to hear me go in depth about everything that makes this game just truly phenomenal, I'll leave a link to my video down below. Without a doubt, Baldur's Gate is a game of the year, but more than that, to me, it is a game of the generation in a lot of ways. This game shows a lot of what an RPG at its peak can be, and man, Larian have absolutely created one for the ages. So to conclude this video, I want to honestly say this year, in terms of games that we've seen release, has been absolutely exceptional. It has been phenomenal. These 10 games are only really scratching the surface of what I really got to experience, and man, they have been phenomenal games. And there are so many that I still just need to play, and there are so many different games that have gotten the limelight this year that I've just been happy to see the success for. It's crazy. Despite making this list, I look at the games that I have on my list that I'm still playing and working through, or games that like I want to play. So like some games that I've just picked up and played a few hours of, and I'm like, man, I wish that could be on the list. I like Liza P, Dave the Diver, or Super Mario Wonder. I'm like, these games are awesome. I just haven't played enough of them yet to really just give them my endorsement, but man, they are so fun so far. And like once I'm done with this video, that's where I'll be playing those games. Hell, I look at the games on my shelf that I haven't even touched yet, like Octopath Traveler 2, the Star Ocean 2 remake, and just recently I picked up Armored Core 6, and I'm like, man, there is so much here to play from this year. It is absolutely insane to me. I feel overwhelmed for choice, and that is just awesome. There is so much here that I feel like I'll be working through the highlights of 2023 for the next few years, man, just trying to get through it all. It's also been the first full year of me making videos on this channel. As someone who loves video games, it has been a ride playing and discussing these games with all of you. So I'd just like to take a moment with this video to close it out by saying thank you all for the ongoing support of this channel and tuning in for this video. It's been a great year and I really appreciate all your time that you put into watching these videos, commenting, liking, and just any form of support. It has just been incredible. So thank you so much. I hope you are all enjoying the holiday season and I look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Let me know your standout games for this year. Any games that didn't make this list that you would have on your list? Anything that I should be playing to add to that long backlog? Let me know in the comments below, and yeah, happy holidays. See you in 2024.